Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in your day. I hope you are having an amazing day. Okay, so today I'm going to talk about values and how you figure out your values and why knowing your values is so important. So I've talked a little bit about values before. I've told you my three core values, which are impact, connection, and adventure. So everything I do in life, I wanted to have impact, connection, and adventure. And now some things won't have all three of those values attached to them, but a lot of things will have all three of those values attached to what I'm doing. So learning your values in life is pretty important. But also knowing your what we're going to call shadow values. So I'm going to talk a little bit about those, what those are, because a lot of people know what their core values are, like core golden values, like the values you want to live your life by. But some people don't know what shadow values are and why those might be important to know as well. So we're going to talk a little bit about that also. So first, figuring out your values. So you can think about what your values are, like, oh, integrity and, oh, service or, whatever, things that you like to do. But really knowing your values is a bit of a process. So I went through this process with my coach to be able to figure out what my core three values were. And it took a little bit of time and distillation and, kind of figuring things out. So he takes you through this worksheet. So I'm going to go through the questions right now, and you can kind of think about them. You can maybe write them down if you want to listen to this and stop the podcast and write down what these questions are and then answer these questions. If anybody wants help going through this workbook or going through these questions, please reach out to me. I would love to help you figure out your values. It's kind of interesting, especially to have somebody else's perspective so they can listen to what you're saying and kind of hear what you're saying. Because sometimes we can't really hear, exactly what we're saying, or we don't maybe know exactly what our values are or whatever are, because we're too attached, because we're attached to ourselves and somebody else can kind of have a different perspective. So I'm going to get out my trusty little iPhone that has it on here. Okay. So figuring out your values is really the fuel for your life. And you can kind of shape your life around what these values are and make your targets in alignment with these values. Because when you're in alignment with your values, then you really can project your life forward at a faster rate. So the first question is, what are 10 things or experiences you'd love more in your life? So what are 10 things or experiences you'd love more in your life? Mine are like travel, seeing my children, going to hiking with my husband. I don't know. I did this a long time ago. I don't remember what I put, and I'm not gonna think of it off the top of my head. But so what are 10 things or experiences you'd love more of in your life right now? Don't overthink it. Just 10 things you want in your life, more things you want to do in your life. Who are 5 to 10 people, personas, or identities you admire. So I did things like Brene Brown, Maya Angelou, my mother, my coaches, stuff like that. And then, think about why you admire them. But what are 5 to 10 people, personas, or identities that you admire? And then think about why. Like, why do you admire Brene Brown? Why do I admire Brene Brown? For her authenticity, and her being able to talk about hard things and not being ashamed. So, she was one of mine. So who are your 5 to 10 people? Okay, what are 5 experiences in your life when you saw yourself as successful? So this is an interesting question, because this doesn't always mean success by society standards. So, success by society standards. Oh, you graduated college. Oh, you got a good job. Oh, you got married. You had kids. That's success by society standards. But what have you done that you feel successful at? So, some of my things aren't, honestly, other people might not see them as successful. But maybe you lost a game. Maybe you were the quarterback and you were throwing for the last play of the game or whatever, and you threw it away out, or I don't know, you threw it over the person's head. I don't know. I don't play football. And so maybe you didn't win the game because of that, but how would that have taught you a lesson? Where would you have found success in that lesson? So, some of mine are failing classes. It taught me a lot about myself and my determination and my audacity to get things done and to study harder. And to really study, failing a few classes in chiropractic school really made me study super hard for boards because I did not want to fail my boards, and I did not fail my boards, thank goodness. But so where do you see yourself as successful in life? So write down 5 of those. Describe one place or experience where you find yourself in the flow, a Zen sort of state. So when you are doing blank, you are just in the flow. You are Zen. This is what you were made to do, and you love it. So when I'm adjusting patients, people in my office, I am in the flow. I love it. So where are you in the flow? Write one thing down. What grabs your attention? What do you naturally study or read? So what do you usually read? So I read a lot of personal development. I read business development, and I like fiction novels. So when I'm in my bath, that's what I like. I usually have, a couple books, 2 to 3 books going at a time, because one's on Audible in my car, one that I read, to read in my office, maybe between patients sometimes, like a chiropractic book, and then one's for my bath. So what do you gravitate towards? What traits do you admire most about yourself? Really think about that. So what traits do you admire about yourself? I admire my determination. I admire my authenticity. I admire my ability to get shit done, especially under pressure, because I procrastinate. So that's something I don't admire about myself. I procrastinate. But what do you admire about yourself? What do you always find time or money for? So mine would be personal development. Like since 2014, I have found time and money for personal development. My children would be another one. So what do you always find time or money for? And that's it. So you would answer those questions. You would talk to somebody like me about it. We would talk about why some of these things are the way they are. I would listen to what you're saying. Like, why do you like these people? Why do these identities do you identify with? Why is this successful to you? What, all these different things. And then we could help distill down your 3 to 5 core values. And like I said, I know what mine are, and knowing what your values are in life will help you stay on target and be able to pick targets in alignment with those values. Because if you pick targets that aren't in alignment with your values, you're just going to piss them off. You don't want to do them. You're just going to not achieve them. You're not going to hit them. And then you're going to be mad because, setting targets doesn't work. Well, you didn't set targets aligned with your values because you don't know what your values really are. So my targets are all in alignment with my 3 values and my mission statement. So figuring that stuff out is really, really important. Now, on the flip side of your values or your golden values or your core values would be your shadow values. So your shadow values are kind of the opposite of your core values, but they're values that you have that maybe don't have you showing up as big as you want to, or maybe they bring you some shame because it has something negative to do with your past. These values will trigger you. This is why you get triggered, is because of your shadow values. Now, shadow values aren't inherently bad. You can have a lot of good from them if you know what they are and you know how to work through them and reframe them and make them serve you instead of you serving them. So a shadow value would be control. So maybe you see yourself as a control freak. You need a lot of control in your life. And I would say this was one of mine in the past. So when Jeremy and I first got together, I needed a lot of control in that relationship because I felt like I'd had no control in so many past relationships. I was so out of control, and I did not have a say in a lot of different relationships, that when I got with him, I had to have control. I had to speak. I had to be heard. I had to be loved this way. I had to do all of this stuff, and I had to have a lot of control. And that triggered me a lot because I didn't know, one, I didn't know that was one of my shadow values. And 2, I didn't know what to do with it. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know why I felt this way. And so I was trying to control everything when really all I wanted was freedom. I wanted the freedom to love myself and to be loved. I wanted the freedom to be myself and just be in a relationship. I wanted freedom, but I sought that out with control instead of just wanting freedom because I didn't realize what it was doing to my body. I didn't realize what that was from my past. And I didn't realize that that was a huge trigger for me. So let me go over a couple of what would be shadow values. Now, learning your shadow values will really help because, like I said, these are the values that trigger you. This is what has you show up small in life instead of what has you show up big in life. This is what keeps you small. So I have them written down. So attention. So people who you see who are like big attention seekers, that might be one of their shadow values. They're seeking attention, maybe because in the past, they didn't have any attention. Maybe in the past when they were younger, they felt just so little and so looked over that now they have to be the class clown or the life of the party or whatever. They needed that attention because they weren't getting it when they were little. And we can all identify with that. I know when I was little, I was the middle child. So let's just say I had classic middle child syndrome. I never felt seen. I never felt heard. I felt compared. Like some of my peers would compare me to my older sister who looked more like what you think a woman should look like. So kind of curvy and voluptuous. And I was kind of athletic and straight. And I got told once, got asked once by a boy who I went to school with when I was 16. He asked me why I didn't look more like my sister. Well, so I just felt like I needed attention because I never got attention. And so how do you seek out attention if you feel like you never got attention? Well, I started wearing silly clothes. I don't say silly clothes, but wearing some funky clothes, dyeing my hair funky colors, and just like seeking attention with my body that way. I wasn't loud. I wasn't the class clown. I wasn't that. But I did seek attention in other ways because I never really felt like I got it. Belonging. So some people just have this huge desire to belong because they never felt like they belonged. But really what they want is meaning. They want meaning in their life. They want meaning with who they are. So see how we can kind of reframe some of these shadow values to mean something good, like belonging and meaning. Control, I already said control, freedom, sexuality. So some people will use their sexuality and try to use sex to get people to come to them and to like them and to be with them when really all they want is love or connection. And I have to tell you, when I was a teenager, I know I did this. I know I used my body. I know I used my sexuality. I know I use that to get boys, because we're in high school, to connect with me or to what I thought was love me. And none of them ever loved me. None of them ever connected with me. They're high school boys. You know what they were thinking with. You know what they wanted. But I needed connection. I needed love. That's what I needed. But I sought it out in a not so healthy way. Superiority. People who feel like they're superior to people who feel like they're better than other people or they deserve more than other people. But maybe that's not actually what they feel. Maybe that's not actually what they think. Maybe they're just looking for evolution and to evolve into somebody better than what they are or who they show up as. And so they're kind of have this superiority issue. Validation, people who constantly seek validation. It can be kind of draining when you're with somebody who constantly seeks validation. Maybe they're just looking for some inspiration or, something in their lives to give them meaning and hope and connection. Or how about money? Do you ever see people who just feel like they're constantly after money or constantly want money? Maybe they just want to serve and service is something that's big for them. And, going out and serving their community, but people see that they're serving this. They think they only want money when really they just want to serve, and that's okay. So learning your shadow values and learning why they are in your life and how you can't have your core values without also having these shadow values and how they will kind of work together, but also could work against each other. Learning those and learning how to reframe your triggers and reframe, what's going on in your life and not allowing it to trigger you anymore. So learning your shadow values will help you figure out those triggers. So what you need to do is you need to kind of think in your life about what triggers you the most, or when you show up small, what's going on, and see if you can distill that down into, one or two of these shadow values that you have in your life, and then reframe that. So again, if you feel like you constantly have to have control, maybe it's because you didn't have any control when you were younger and you felt super out of control. And so now you grasp at all of this control, but that's not really what it is. And you can use that control in a positive way. So I was listening to a podcast today called Dare to Move, I believe, and she was talking about shadow values. And she was talking about how control was one of hers. And so one of the ways she uses control in her life is she's a fitness instructor. She teaches a group of 50 women and she gets to yell at them, she said, on a headset. I wouldn't like that at all. I don't go to classes where I get yelled at because that does not serve me. So I tried spin before, but I just don't like all the loud and the yelling. I'm a quieter person. Two, I don't like to yell and be loud and be up in people's faces, but that's how she uses control to serve her better. She gets to inspire other women with it. She gets to help them get in shape, and they're paying her to do it. So everybody's happy. So how could you use some of these shadow values to serve you? How could you use money to serve you? Are you somebody who thinks that you don't have enough? How can you use that to serve you? How can you serve others to maybe make more money? Do you feel like you're better than other people? How can you use that to make yourself better? What is it that you really want? How about your sexuality? Are you using your sexuality in a negative way? Are you really looking for love and connection? Maybe you are. Maybe sit down and really evaluate some of these things and decide how you're using them. So your core values, I challenge you to figure those out. I challenge you to go through the questions I asked and write down your answers and reach out to me, and I can help you distill down those core values. And then do a little work on your shadow values. Try to figure out what those are in your life. What values do you feel like you have that aren't bringing you joy, that aren't serving you in a higher way, or maybe you feel a little bit of shame around? So what are those shadow values in your life? How does it pertain to you? Those are both very good things to know, and very good things to know as we start to wrap up Q4 and get into Q1 of 2021. Because as we figure out our values, our shadow values, our mission statement, we will know what we want our targets to be the first quarter of 2021. And we will be able to set those targets with certainty and know that they are targets aligned with our values, because that's what we really want. And that's who we really are. And that, my friends, is very important. So please reach out. Join my private Facebook group, Transforming Self, Dr. Amelia Rodrock, Helping Women Thrive. Join the group, participate in the Core 4 Challenge that's starting in December, or if you're listening to this after December, we'll do the Core 4 Challenge again. Figure out your values. Come to me, have me figure out your values with you. It's not very hard to do, but sometimes we need an outside person to help us. So, all right, everybody. Well, I hope you learned a little bit something about values and why it's important to figure them out. So until next time, be courageous. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you've enjoyed the show. There are many ways to connect with me, and I want to connect with each and every one of you. Facebook seems to be the easiest right now. I have a Facebook page for my podcast, the Transforming Self podcast page, or you can connect with me personally, Amelia Rodrock, on Facebook. I also have an Instagram and a YouTube page. So please reach out. I am here for each and every one of you. I want to help every one of you thrive to your full potential.